My stepdad took over my grandparents' business and my mom pushed me out, then they begged me to fix his mess. But my answer left them speechless. I, a 32-year-old man, have been estranged from my family for 4 years now. It's a long and complicated story, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. My mom remarried when I was 15 to my stepdad, Jim. At first, things seemed okay. Jim was nice enough and he made my mom happy. I was just glad to see her smile again after my dad passed away when I was 12. My dad's death was sudden, a car accident on his way home from work. It hit our family hard, especially my mom. For 3 years, she was a shadow of her former self, barely keeping it together for my sake. When she met Jim at a grief support group, it was like watching her come back to life. I was grateful for that, even if I wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea of her remarrying. Growing up, I was really close to my maternal grandparents. They owned a successful local grocery store chain that had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandpa, Robert, started with one small corner store back in the 1960s. He worked tirelessly, often sleeping in the back room to keep the business afloat. My grandma, Ellen, was right there beside him, managing the books and caring for their growing family. By the time I came along, they had expanded to a chain of 12 stores across our state. I spent most of my summers working there, learning the ins and outs of the business. I started small, bagging groceries and stocking shelves. As I got older, I moved up to cashier, then shift manager. My grandpa always said that one day it would be mine to run. I loved every minute of it. The smell of fresh produce in the morning, the chatter of regular customers, the satisfaction of a well-organized stockroom. It all felt like home to me. More than that, I loved the sense of community our stores fostered. We knew our customers by name, sponsored local sports teams, and always had a donation bin for the food bank. When I turned 18, my grandpa started involving me more in the management side of things. He taught me about inventory management, financial planning, and negotiating with suppliers. It was clear that he was grooming me to take over someday. I couldn't wait for the day I'd be running the stores myself, carrying on the family legacy. Things changed when my grandpa had a stroke when I was 25. I remember the day clearly. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday dinner at their house. Grandpa was telling one of his old stories about the early days of the store when, suddenly, his words slurred and he slumped in his chair. The next few hours were a blur of ambulances, hospital waiting rooms, and tearful phone calls. He survived, but he wasn't able to manage the business anymore. The doctor said he needed rest and rehabilitation. My grandma was overwhelmed, trying to keep things going. She was torn between running the business and taking care of Grandpa. That's when Jim stepped in and offered to help. At first, it seemed like a godsend. Jim had some business experience from his previous job in sales, and he promised to keep things running smoothly until I was ready to take over. My mom was so proud of him for stepping up to help her parents. I was grateful too, thinking it would give me more time to learn without the pressure of running everything right away. But as the months went by, I started noticing changes. Jim was making decisions without consulting anyone. He brought in his friend Mike as the new head of purchasing, firing Uncle Joe, who had been with us for 20 years. He replaced our local produce suppliers with a big national company, saying it would cut costs. The warm family atmosphere of our stores was disappearing. I tried talking to my grandparents about it, but they were just grateful to have someone handling things. My grandpa's health was declining, and my grandma was focused on taking care of him. They trusted Jim because my mom trusted him. I started voicing my concerns to my mom. I showed her the numbers, pointing out how profits were down and customer complaints were up. Our loyal customers were unhappy with the changes, especially the loss of local produce, but she always defended Jim, saying he knew what he was doing and that change was necessary for growth. Things came to a head when my grandpa passed away last year. His decline had been gradual but steady. In his last few months, he was barely aware of his surroundings, but in his final week, he had a moment of clarity. He called me to his bedside and made me promise to take care of the family business. "It's more than just stores," he said. "It's our family's heart and soul." In his will, he left the business to me, with the condition that I take over within a year of his death. I was ready to step up, to honor his memory and fulfill my promise. But Jim had other ideas. He convinced my grandma to sign over her share of the business to him, claiming it was the best way to protect the family's interests. He told her that at her age, she shouldn't have to worry about business matters. When I confronted him about it, he told me I was too young and inexperienced to run things. He said I should be grateful that he was there to save the business. I was furious. This was my inheritance, my grandpa's legacy. I went to my mom, expecting her to back me up. Instead, she sided with Jim. She told me I was being ungrateful and that I should trust Jim's experience. When I insisted on fighting for my inheritance, she gave me an ultimatum: either look the other way and let Jim run things, or walk away entirely. I couldn't believe it. My own mother was choosing her husband over me and over her parents' legacy. In that moment, I realized how much our relationship had changed since she married Jim. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about years of feeling sidelined and ignored. I thought about all the family dinners where Jim dominated the conversation, talking about his grand plans for the stores. I remembered how my ideas were always dismissed as naive or old-fashioned. I thought about how my mom had slowly stopped asking about my day or my plans, too focused on supporting Jim's vision. So, I chose to walk away. I packed up my things and left that night. I blocked their numbers and moved to a different city. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, but I couldn't stand by and watch Jim destroy everything my grandparents had built. The first few months were tough. I crashed on a friend's couch while looking for a job. I missed my family, my hometown, the stores that had been such a big part of my life. But slowly I started to build a new life for myself. I found a job at a local boutique grocery store. It wasn't the same as our family business, but it felt familiar enough to be comforting. It's been 4 years now. I've worked my way up to manager at the store. I've even started taking night classes in business administration, determined to honor my grandpa's memory by succeeding on my own terms. I've made new friends, started my own small side business selling homemade jams using my grandma's recipes, and even met someone special. I thought I'd put it all behind me until I got a call from my mom last week. Somehow she'd gotten my new number. She was crying, begging me to come back. Apparently Jim had run the business into the ground. They were facing bankruptcy and possible legal troubles. She said they needed my help to save the family legacy. Part of me wanted to rush back and try to fix things. I thought about all those loyal customers, the employees who had been with us for decades. I remembered my promise to my grandpa, but a bigger part remembered how they had pushed me aside, how they had betrayed my grandparents' trust. So, I told her no. I said I was sorry, but I couldn't help them anymore. Now, I'm sitting here wondering if I did the right thing. The business my grandparents worked so hard to build is collapsing, and I'm doing nothing to stop it. But at the same time, I can't forget how my family treated me. The thought of going back, of facing Jim and my mom, makes my stomach churn. Am I wrong for refusing to help? Should I have swallowed my pride and gone back to save the business? I don't know what to do. The legacy my grandpa entrusted to me is crumbling, but going back feels like erasing the life I built for myself. I'm torn between my past and my future, and I don't know which way to turn. It's been about 6 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone who commented and shared their thoughts. Your support and advice meant a lot to me during a really tough time. After my mom's call, I decided to do some digging. I couldn't just let things lie, not when it came to my grandparents' legacy. I reached out to a few old family friends who still worked at the stores. What I found out was worse than I could have imagined. Jim hadn't just mismanaged the business. He'd been embezzling money for years. He'd set up fake supplier accounts and had been funneling money into his personal accounts. The business was millions in debt, and there were already investigations underway by the state attorney general's office. I was shocked. I knew Jim was bad at running the business, but I never thought he was a criminal. I felt sick thinking about how my grandparents' hard work had been exploited like this. I remembered all the times Jim had talked about his innovative business strategies, how he was modernizing our operations. It all seemed so obvious in hindsight. One of my old friends, Sarah, who still worked as a manager at one of our stores, told me how things had deteriorated. The shelves were often half empty because they couldn't pay suppliers. Longtime employees were leaving in droves, unable to deal with the constant stress and uncertainty. The community programs my grandparents had started, the annual scholarship for local students, the food drives, the free Thanksgiving dinners, had all been scrapped. My mom called again a few weeks later. This time, she wasn't just asking for help, she was begging for forgiveness. She told me she had no idea what Jim had been doing. She said she'd filed for divorce and was trying to cooperate with the investigators to save what was left of the business. I listened to her cry and apologized for everything. For not believing me, for choosing Jim over me, for letting him take advantage of my grandparents. She told me how blind she'd been, how Jim had manipulated her by playing on her insecurities and her grief over losing Dad. Part of me wanted to forgive her right away, but I couldn't. The hurt was still too fresh. I told her I needed time to think. I hung up and spent the next few days wrestling with what to do. On one hand, this was my family's legacy, something my grandparents had built from nothing. I thought about all the customers who had become like family over the years, the employees who had been with us for decades. On the other hand, going back meant dealing with all the pain and betrayal I'd tried to leave behind. In the end, I decided I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. This wasn't just about my mom or Jim anymore. It was about all the people who depended on our stores, about the community my grandparents had worked so hard to support. I contacted a lawyer and started looking into what could be done to save the business. It was a long shot, but I had to try. The next few months were a whirlwind. I took a leave of absence from my job and moved back to my hometown. I spent days going through financial records, meeting with lawyers, and trying to negotiate with creditors. It was overwhelming. There were times when I wanted to just give up and go back to my new life. But then I'd remember my grandpa's words about the stores being our family's heart and soul. It was during this time that I really saw how much damage Jim had done, not just to the business but to my family. My mom looked years older, worn down by stress and guilt. When I first saw her, I hardly recognized her. Her hair had gone completely gray, and there were deep lines around her eyes and mouth that hadn't been there before. My grandma, who was now in a nursing home, barely recognized me when I visited. The vibrant, strong woman who had helped build our family business was now frail and confused. It broke my heart to see her like that, to know that she'd spent her final years watching her life's work crumble. As for Jim, he disappeared. Last I heard, he'd fled the country to avoid prosecution. The police had traced large transfers to offshore accounts, but so far they hadn't been able to locate him. Part of me hopes they catch him, but mostly, I just want to focus on moving forward. The business is still in trouble, but we've managed to keep 2 of the original stores open. It's a far cry from the thriving chain it once was, but it's something. I'm working on rebuilding relationships with old customers and suppliers, trying to restore some of what was lost. It's hard work, but every now and then, I'll get a glimmer of hope. Like when old Mrs. Johnson came in, hugged me, and said she was glad to see a family face back in the store. I'm trying to bring back some of the community programs we used to have. We've started small, with a donation bin for the local food bank. It's not much, but it's a start. I want to honor my grandparents' memory by making the stores a vital part of the community again. My relationship with my mom is still strained. We're talking, but there's a lot of hurt to work through. She's trying to help with the business, but it's hard for both of us to be around each other for long. There are moments when I see flashes of the mom I remember from before Jim, but then the memory of her betrayal comes flooding back. I'm not sure what the future holds. Some days, I wonder if I made the right choice coming back. But then I'll have an old customer come in telling me how glad they are that we're still here, and I remember why I'm doing this. It's not just about the business anymore. It's about honoring my grandparents' memory and trying to salvage what's left of my family. It's about keeping a promise I made to my grandpa. It's hard work, and I'm not sure if we'll succeed, but I know I have to try. For now, I'm taking it one day at a time, hoping that somehow we can rebuild what was lost. The past year has been one of the most challenging of my life, but also one of the most transformative. First, the business. After months of negotiating and restructuring, we managed to keep 3 stores open. It's a far cry from the dozen we once had, but it's stable. We've gone back to the basics, focusing on quality products, personalized service, and community involvement. Slowly but surely, we're rebuilding our reputation. Getting to this point wasn't easy. I had to make some tough decisions, including letting go of some longtime employees. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. These were people who had watched me grow up, who had been like family. But to keep the business afloat, we had to streamline operations. We've also had to renegotiate contracts with all our suppliers. Many of them were hesitant to work with us again after what happened with Jim. I spent countless hours in meetings, explaining our new management structure and plans for the future. Slowly, we're rebuilding those relationships. The legal issues are mostly resolved. Jim was eventually caught trying to enter Canada with a fake passport. He's now been extradited and is facing charges for embezzlement and fraud. Seeing him in court was surreal. He looked nothing like the man who had once been part of our family. His hair had gone completely gray, and he'd lost a lot of weight. I felt no satisfaction, just a deep sadness for everything that had been lost. My mom pled ignorance to Jim's crimes and cooperated fully with the investigation. She avoided legal troubles but lost almost everything in the divorce. She's now working part-time at one of our stores. It's awkward sometimes, but we're learning to work together again. Having her there is complicated. On one hand, it's nice to see her trying to make amends, to see her interacting with customers like she used to when I was a kid. On the other hand, there are moments when the resentment bubbles up, like when she tries to give me advice about running the store, and I can't help but think, where was this concern when Jim was running everything into the ground? Our relationship is still a work in progress. There are good days and bad days. Sometimes we can laugh and reminisce about old times, like the Christmas when Grandpa dressed up as Santa for all the kids in the store. Other days, the weight of everything that happened feels too heavy to bear. We're in family counseling trying to rebuild trust and understanding. It's slow going, but we're both committed to trying. My grandma passed away 6 months ago. Her last few months were difficult. Some days she was lucid, asking about the stores and reminiscing about the old days. Other days, she didn't recognize any of us. In her final days, she seemed to understand what had happened. She made me promise to keep the family business going, not just for her and Grandpa, but for all the people who depended on it. Her faith in me has become my driving force. The day of her funeral was tough. Standing there, listening to people share memories of her and Grandpa, I felt the full weight of the legacy I was trying to preserve. It wasn't just about keeping some stores open. It was about maintaining a vital part of our community's history. As for me, I've settled back in my hometown. Running the business is challenging but rewarding. There are days when I miss my old life and the independence I had, but then a longtime customer will come in and tell me how much it means to them that we're still here, and I know I'm where I need to be. I've had to learn a lot in a short time. My business classes have come in handy, but there's so much that you can only learn through experience. I've made mistakes along the way, like when I tried to change our long-standing holiday sale and faced a near revolt from our regular customers. But I'm learning, adapting, and growing every day. One of the biggest challenges has been rebuilding trust with our employees. Many of them felt betrayed by what happened with Jim, and rightfully so. I've tried to be as transparent as possible about our financial situation and future plans. We've instituted a profit-sharing program for long-term employees, trying to show them that we're all in this together. I've also been working on bringing back some of the community involvement that was always so important to my grandparents. We've restarted the annual scholarship program for local high school students. It's smaller than it used to be, but it's a start. We're also partnering with the local food bank again, hosting monthly food drives in our stores. On a personal level, I've reconnected with old friends and even started dating someone I knew from high school. Her name is Lisa, and she's been incredibly supportive through all of this. She remembers the stores from when we were kids and understands how much they mean to me and to the community. Having her by my side has been a bright spot in some very dark times. Looking back, I don't regret my decision to come back and try to save the business. It hasn't been easy, and there have been plenty of times when I've wanted to give up. The stress has been enormous. There are nights when I lie awake, worrying about payroll or inventory or a dozen other things. But I've also rediscovered a sense of purpose and connection to my roots that I didn't realize I was missing. When I walk through the stores, I can almost feel my grandparents' presence. I remember the lessons they taught me, not just about business, but about treating people with kindness and respect. I'm not sure what the future holds. The business is stable for now, but there's still a long way to go. My relationship with my mom is improving, but we have years of hurt to work through. Some days it all feels overwhelming, but then I'll walk through one of our stores, see the familiar faces of our staff and customers, and remember why I'm doing this. It's not just about preserving a business. It's about honoring a legacy and being part of a community. Last week, an elderly customer came in. She's been shopping with us since my grandpa opened the first store. She took my hand and told me how proud my grandparents would be of me. In that moment, all the stress and doubt faded away. I knew I was exactly where I needed to be. I don't know if this is my happy ending. Maybe it's just a new beginning. There are still challenges ahead, relationships to mend and a business to rebuild. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful about the future. I'm here, I'm trying, and for now, that has to be enough.